Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the White Lake Township Board meeting on Tuesday, May 17th, 7 p.m. here at the Annex. At this time, I would like all of you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we're seated, if you would remain standing, it is Police Week from the 15th to the 21st, and I would like to take a moment of silence for the 400 plus officers that died in the line of duty in the last year. Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Supervisor Kowal.
Here.
Clerk Noble. Here. Treasurer Roman.
Here.
Trustee Powell.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Looking for support?
Support.
I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 5, public comment. Public comment is generally for items that are not on the agenda. If you have something that you would like to say, please come to the podium, identify yourself for the recorder. You will be allowed 3 minutes to chat.
Thank you very much. I won't take that long. But thank you, Mr. Supervisor and Mr. Treasurer and Mr. Clerk and all the trustees and the staff. I just wanted to thank Mr. Supervisor for sending a letter so promptly to our county executive regarding the Road Commission of Oakland County, because it's been rumored for quite some time that there was intention to bring that in-house, so to speak. And I think that a resolution that was introduced at our last board meeting is kind of a first step towards that, setting up a ad hoc committee to study the operations of the Road Commission. Bringing them into underneath our auspices would be a total disaster. You want to talk about getting political? It would get totally political. So we're going to fight that tooth and nail, and I thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And then the other thing, I was just glad to see that you got $100,000 out of the request that you asked for critical infrastructure for water along Bogey Lake Road. 36 CVTs responded. 21 were approved right away, and then we're allocating some more money, about $1.5 million for the other 15 CVTs for their projects, because they're all worthy as far as health and environment go and quality of life. So we are working away and trying to do the best we can with ARPA money, and I like projects that it's a one-time spend, that because the ARPA money is going to go away, and using any long time or adding to our spending, adding to our government is not a good idea when the money runs out, and then how are you going to fund it? So, and I appreciate any input from any of you. Anytime you have any concerns about the county, just pick up the phone and give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak at this time? Seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is a list of revenue expenses, check disbursements, department reports, and such information communications. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Roman.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
I have motion to approve. Looking for support? Support. I have motion. I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Items 7A and B combined. Approval of the minutes of the special board meeting of April 13th, 2022, and approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 19th, 2022. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, looking for a motion.
Make a motion to go ahead.
I have a motion from the clerk. Looking for support.
Support.
Motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's have it. Item number 8, presentation. This is the time of year that White Lake Township gets its report card. So Pam, I'm going to let you take the floor. You can identify yourself for the recorder.
All right.
don't know if I turned this off or.
Oh, it's on.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right, well, thank you. We're excited to be here tonight. Pam Hill, partner with Plant Moran, and I have with me here tonight Garrett Gauthier, who is the senior on the job. And we're here to talk a little bit about the results of the audit for the December 31st, 2021 audit. You should have in your packet the thick bound financial statements along with a letter addressed to the Board of Directors, or I'm sorry, the Township Board. And then also we are going to go through the presentation kind of how we have in years past so that we don't need to go through all 100+ pages of the reports that you have. So really just to kind of give a broad overview of the process this year, it went very, very smoothly. We were finally able to come back on site, so we were very excited about that. Really helped to make it a more efficient process all around. We did spend over 300 hours auditing the township this year. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of work for your team to get ready for. So I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Elaine and Dawn, Treasurer Roman, Supervisor Colwell, and Clerk Noble. And we work with all of you very closely throughout the process, and we appreciate all the professionalism we receive in order to get the audit done, not only efficiently, but done right? And that's the most important thing. So before we kind of get into the numbers, I did just want to talk a little bit about the opinion that we'd be giving. So we did issue an unmodified opinion, which is basically means you can rely on the numbers as they are stated within the financial statements. And if you were to kind of equate that to like a letter grade in school, right, back in those days, it would be like getting an A+ on your report card. So we're going to talk a little bit about those numbers and how you got there this year. And I'm going to turn it over to Garrett to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. So in this presentation, we're just going to kind of take a high-level look at the general fund, the governmental funds, and the water and sewer. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this first slide is really looking at the general fund revenue and transfers in. So in 2021, that is the far right column, and it goes from 2021 back to 2017. You'll see in 2021, total revenue and transfers in was $6,500,000. That was roughly about a decrease of $486,000 from last year. You'll see the two largest sources of revenue are property taxes and state revenue. So property tax revenue was roughly $1,268,000, which was about an increase of $26,000 from last year. So fairly consistent there with the property taxes. If you want to go back to the revenue real quick. So the other largest source is state revenue. State revenue is really made up of state share revenue and state grants received. That's the largest source of revenue, and that was roughly $3,276,000. This had a decrease of roughly $250,000, which what that decrease was from is in 2020, there was a grant of $750,000 for the Michigan Strategic Fund. So that was received in 2020 and just not received in 2021. So that truly was what caused a decrease in overall revenue, is that grant. All right, next slide is taking a look at the general fund expenditures and transfers out. Again, 2021 is in the far right column. I do want to point out, it looks like expenditures and transfers out took a very large increase in 2021. So in 2021, the expenditures and transfers out was roughly $10,241,000, which was an increase of $3,500,000 from last year. But really what this increase is from is there was a transfer from the general fund to the improvement revolving fund of $5,300,000 in 2021. Normally, the township would just assign the available fund balance in the general fund to be used for future projects. This year, they just transferred the money over to the improvement revolving fund for those future projects. So that's really what caused the increase in the expenditures and transfers out. On this slide, we're just taking a look at the unassigned available balance, fund balance of the general fund. So as you can see, there's roughly $1,600,000 in unassigned fund balance in the general fund. And what we do is we like to look at this in comparison to the annual expenditures. So the unassigned fund balance makes up roughly 33% of your annual expenditures in 2021. So another way of looking at that is roughly a third of the year's expenditures could be paid from the unassigned fund balance. And that 33% is up 5% from 2020. So. Next slide, we're going to take a look at the governmental funds expenditures in total. So total expenditures in the governmental funds was $19,175,000, which was a decrease of roughly $1,700,000 from 2020. You'll see the largest expenditures here are in general government and public safety. Public safety was roughly $9,900,000. General government was $4,100,000. Both those saw a slight increase from last year, which is really just due to an increase in salary and fringes. Overall, the other line I want to point out is the public works. So you see total public works expenditures of $3,670,000, which was a decrease of roughly $2,200,000 from 2020. And again, that decrease is due to there's more road projects that occurred in 2020. And a lot of that is due to those grants received that were used for those road projects. So. Next, we're going to shift over to the enterprise funds, and we're going to look at the water fund and the sewer fund separately. So looking at the water fund first, you'll see total operating revenue of $1,200,000, and that was about a $6,000 increase, so very consistent from last year. Total operating expenses were $1,130,000, and that was just a decrease of roughly $9,000. And operating income in 2021 was $93,000. An increase of roughly $15,000 from 2020. So overall, water fund was very, very consistent from last year. Next, we're going to take a look at the sewer fund. Now, this slide looks a little different since there's only 1 year to look at. And why we have this slide is in 2021, the sewer fund began being reported as an enterprise fund. In the past, all the sewer activity was captured in the governmental activities. Beginning in 2021, it was established that the sewer fund became self-sufficient. So that's why it began being reported as an enterprise fund. And as you can see from this slide, the operating income was roughly negative $41,000, so pretty close to break even in 2021 for the sewer fund.
At many years during the past, the sewer fund was loaned money from the general fund.
No, it wasn't loan money, reappropriated,
Transferred.
transferred.
Okay, transferred. The intent of previous boards anyway, that would be a loan to the sanitary sewer fund so that it could be paid back when the sanitary fund was self-supporting. Based upon what the supervisor just told me, that did not happen, so future years, we can't recapture those funds?
It has been paid back.
So all the money,
There was, technically, it was not a loan, it was a transfer, okay? And the transfer has been reimbursed, and you should get with the treasurer to see the documentation.
Okay.
We're up to snuff.
Was that you?
That is why this year, the auditors recommended that it would go to an enterprise fund, because we are in such decent shape.
well,
and
that's
have had
why
a
I
good
asked,
recovery.
just needed to understand that, so
Yeah.
thank you. All right, good. That happened the way I was hoping, so, good.
Okay, and this last slide, we want to take a quick look at legacy costs. So in this slide, you'll see the blue is the net pension liability and the orange is the net OPEB liability. The 2021 net pension liability was $10,700,000, and the net pension liability was 72.31% funded, which is a slight increase from the prior year. One thing I do want to point out with the pension fund is the MERS pension fund is on a year lag. So the measurement date is actually as of 12/31/2020, so it would reflect the market at that point. So every year it's kind of a year behind as far as the measurement date. The net OPEB liability, you'll see, is $4,923,000, and that is actually, the funded status is 59.18% funded, and that again is an increase from prior year. As you can see with the net OPEB liability, it significantly decreased over the last 4 years. And that really is just from continual efforts of the township and making additional contributions every year. So in 2021, there was an additional contribution made to the OPEB liability of $790,000. So that's what's kind of caused that significant decrease year over year.
So actually, if you don't mind, just to kind of recap what Garrett said. So I think just from an overall, the township had a really good year. I think you came in significantly under budget, so you did a great job of monitoring the budget. I know there were some projects that were not completed during 2021 that'll go into 2022, but overall, you budgeted conservatively on the revenues. State share revenue was such a big unknown, I think, at the end of 2020 when you had to pass the 2021 budget. That definitely, you saw some favorable increases in that in the current year, and then obviously just really keeping a good watch on the expenditures and making sure that you're staying within budget there. So general fund ended the year, I think, in a really good position, healthy year. Like Garrett said, water and sewer, pretty status quo. Your operating income is not too high or too low. It's kind of just right in that kind of sweet spot. And then on the legacy costs, you're right in that kind of normal range from a funding perspective for your pension. You're making all your required contributions. Per state law, you're actually making a little bit more than what's required to kind of try to catch up. And you've just done a phenomenal job with the OPEB plan and being able to really reduce that liability in quite a short period of time. Not a lot of communities have been able to do that. So I think you should feel really good about that from a long-term legacy perspective as well. So I think that's all we had planned to cover. The letter is pretty straightforward, nothing really significant to point out. I know you've had a chance to kind of look through it, but be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from any of the board members at this time?
I would just,
I just want to say, you guys did a super job with the audit and a great job explaining this, so
Thank you.
you guys get an A+ as well.
All right.
I'd just like to thank Elaine and Don. Elaine's our finance director, and Don Bachman for working really hard with your staff, and you guys are incredible, and really every year, the second year, I've learned a tremendous amount, and coming in at 72.5, Garrett, right, for our unfunded pension liability is incredible, so thanks, professional staff. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate everything that you folks do, and of course, Elaine, Don, Kim, Mike, and Anthony, and the other staff members throughout the township that worked on this. It's certainly appreciated. A team effort has paid off, and here are the numbers. Numbers don't lie.
Yep.
So we're trying to meet our objective, and as a matter of fact, for the sake of the public, we have another payment for that OPEB liability on tonight's agenda so that we can continue to beat down that responsibility that the township has. When you look at that number, and you talked about the pension, I just wanted to reiterate to the public that that is sort of a moving number. That number flows. So someone would see, well, you have a $10 million liability. Well, it doesn't mean that's today's liability, that's a future liability. But as the market goes up and goes down and our contributions go up and go down and people pass away and people through attrition and other things happen, the fund changes. So it's a constant sinus rhythm type of action. But we are in much, much better shape than many municipalities, correct?
Yes, I think, yeah, and I know MERS has a lot of numbers out there in terms of, I think, and I don't want to necessarily quote this because I don't want to get it wrong, but I want to say it was over 50%. We're less than 50% funded. So it is a huge issue that I think a lot of communities are facing. And as you continue to address this, through your additional contributions, that's really all you can do. So.
It's one of those things, it's kind of like in the rear view, as I told someone, it's a rear view mirror type of item. And the thing is that this item may be closer than you think, so to speak, as it says on the mirror, because if you don't stay after it, it will and can consume you as a community. So again, I appreciate all my board members and their insight as to, what the importance of this is. And I certainly appreciate all your work. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you
You
all.
don't have to stay for the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Rick.
Yes, Mr. Roman.
And just so the rest of the board knows, years ago, we looked at not only the Phase 1 sewer bonds, but also the Pontiac Lake sewer bonds. Those are paid off as well. We made our last bond payment on the Pontiac Lake sewer debt, just about a month ago. So we're in good shape.
So we're in good shape. Yep. So, and if you would like a more comprehensive view of that, you should have a chit chat with Mike. Yep.
We are a watchful board, and it's nice for it to be recognized, and I appreciate their efforts.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Tonight, we're going to have a public hearing to hear public comment on sanitary sewer system improvements of 2022 and the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Cwsrf project plan. And what that is a long-term plan, what makes the wheels go down and things go down the sewer, and of that nature. So, Mr. Lufkin, I am going to let you do a real brief synopsis, and then I'm going to open the public hearing.
I just wanted to mention procedurally, Mr. Supervisor, if we could just, we'll do an introduction, then we can open the public hearing. We'll present the project plan. If there's any questions, we'll try to address them. If not, we'll address them in the final version of the project plan, but just procedurally. And then after that, when we close public hearing, we'll have to have a vote on resolution if the township decides they want to move forward, so.
Okay, you want to follow those state requirements to the letter?
Absolutely.
Okay. You want to do the introduction of your staff?
Mr. Potter, you want to introduce this, or you want me to?
Go ahead, Mike.
All right. So I'll introduce it, and then we'll open the public hearing, right? So Mike Lufkin with DLZ, consulting engineer for White Lake Township. I'm here with Kyle Gall, my colleague from the DLZ Waterford office. We'll get into just a brief presentation, hopefully kind of outline some of the findings, but just a quick recap. Back in March, Township Board approved a proposal for DLZ to prepare this project plan. It's an attempt to secure some financing, low-interest loan financing through Eagle in the state of Michigan for some sanitary sewer improvements. There's another project on the water side. We're doing the same thing. That'll be at next month's meeting. We'll give a public hearing presentation for that as well. So that's a brief introduction. I'll be happy to get into it when we open the public hearing.
You want to do the full, is the requirement, is the full presentation is done during the public hearing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll give the presentation. I think Eagle's going to want to see that in the minutes, and then we'll answer any questions that might come from that, so.
Very good. Any questions?
So you're doing the public hearing now?
Correct. So at this time, I will open the public hearing, make a motion to open the public hearing to hear the public comments on the sanitary system improvements 2022 Clean Water State Revolving Fund Cwsrf project plan. I will make that in the form of a motion. Looking for support?
Support.
I have motion and support. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Kowal.
Yes.
Treasurer Roman.
Yes.
Trustee Powell.
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Clerk Noble, yes.
We are now in public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you, Board. Pleasure to be here today. We're here tonight to talk about the Cwsrf project plan that the township asked us to prepare on their behalf and ultimately submit to the state in hopes of securing some funding for some sewer improvements. Just backing up a little bit and how we got here, in 2017 through 2019, the township secured a grant. It was called a SAW grant, Stormwater Asset Management and Wastewater Grant. And as part of that, we were able to do a lot of unique stuff to help identify shortcomings, shortfalls within the sanitary system, digitize a lot of your plans, put those into GIS, do a capital improvement plan, a whole lot of things, planning aspect type things. And the nice thing about that was 90% of that was reimbursed by the grant program. So it was only a 10% outlay by the township. So as a follow-up to the capital improvement plan that we put together, the township at the time took on a couple of sewer projects, smaller in nature, but certainly the most critical ones. Now, backing up to this January, intent to apply for project funding for these programs was due to the state, to Eagle. We met with Director Potter and Supervisor Kowal, talked about project needs, and we identified what's essentially kind of a package of the first 5 years of projects that were identified in that capital improvement plan. Thinking, package them up, maybe we can get some economy of scale, knock out a bunch of the projects at one time and kind of do it that way. So that's the intent here. I'm going to have Kyle talk a little bit about the Cwsrf program, if you're not familiar with that, or if any of the public's not familiar with that, and then we'll get into a little bit of the project specifics.
All right, thank you. So the Michigan Clean Water State Revolving Fund program, it's a low-interest loan financing program that helps assist communities with the construction of needed sanitary sewer improvements. Back in 1988, Michigan enacted Public Act 317, the Clean Water Assistance Act, to establish the state revolving fund, which is now codified as Part 53, 1994, Public Act 451 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. Each fiscal year, Congress authorizes an amount to be appropriated, and that's then allocated among the states. This year, for fiscal year 2023, $800 million is available from Congress. And this can be used to fund wastewater treatment plant upgrades and expansions, infiltration and inflow, as well as combined sewer overflow corrections, pumping station improvements or additions, and sanitary sewer rehabilitation. So as part of this program, there's certain requirements that are needed by the state, by EGLE, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And that public hearing includes a description of the sanitary sewer needs and alternatives, a description of the recommended alternatives with the costs, a discussion of the project financing, and a description of the social and environmental impacts and mitigation of impacts. So that's what we're going to end up talking about today. And I'll let you get into the system.
Thanks, Kyle. What we've got here on the screen is just a map of your sanitary sewer collection system. I could go over the map and point it all out. Essentially, you've got two districts. On the lower left-hand side, you've got what's called the Western District. You've got approximately 1.5 million gallons a day capacity in that system, purchase capacity, discharges to Commerce Township. You're using very little of that. You're only at about 5% of the capacity right now. The rest of the system is what we call the Eastern District. That also discharges to the south to Commerce Township at a different point. You're using more of that. It's about 2 million gallons per day capacity, and you're using approximately 56% of that, just to give you some idea where you're at on your build out of your system. Back up to that, Sean, I'm going to be there for a minute, but you've got two different types of sanitary sewer in your system. You got a main trunk line that we'll get into a little bit later, coming down Union Lake Road, Farnsworth, and then Round Lake Road, along Cooley Lake Road out to the discharge. That's a main gravity system. That was what is called phase one of your system. It was built out first. Obviously, that was your main trunk line and your discharge. And then what else you've got a lot of low pressure sanitary sewer systems, which is, it's kind of like it's described. It requires a pumping system in order to pump into it, and it's low pressure, not like your water main pressure, but low pressure to kind of move the sewage along. And it comes out to the gravity sewer. And the point of interest right here is going to be the intersection at Union Lake Road and Elizabeth Lake Road, where the old Circus is. And then a little bit north of that, you've got pressure sewer coming from the north, the Pontiac Lake District, a lot of pressure sewer coming down that way. Ultimately, both of those pressure sewer branches come into a gravity sewer at Union Lake Road there. And what we found when we did the SAW grant investigations was the pressure sewer discharging to the gravity sewer. There's a lot of hydrogen sulfide buildup. Hydrogen sulfide is an off gas of the sewer, and it kind of happens as there's like some chemistry in the pressure sewer that takes place when you've got a long time of concentration of the sewage sitting in that pipe. before it discharges out to the gravity, it off-gases the hydrogen sulfide. And that's not great for your system components that are made out of concrete. And that's what you've got on that discharge line coming out of the system. You've got mainly a 30-inch gravity sewer coming down that main path that I'm talking about. So we'll get into some of the recommendations that we've got, what we found, some of those type of things. But, generally, you have a young system, but we did find some issues, and that's what we're here tonight to talk about, some opportunities for correction. Next slide, Sean. So what we identified in the project plan is some of the system needs are repair and rehabilitation of 14,000 feet plus or minus gravity sewer main, repair of 22 gravity manholes, repair of 21 pressure sewer manholes. Oakland County, through your operations agreement, does an annual inspection of at least a portion of your sanitary sewer system, and their continued video and findings support some of the degradation and issues that we'll show you in a little bit here, and on a few slides that kind of document some of the corrosion that we're finding and stuff. It's a little bit unfortunate because you do have a young system. A lot of that was put in the early 2000s, I believe, 2001, 2 timeframe. You would expect that. You would expect that to have a life of 40, 50 years, somewhere in that time frame. But certainly we're seeing degradation ahead of that schedule just because of the hydrogen sulfide damage. So next slide, please. So this map just kind of identifies some of the repair areas that we've identified, some of the gravity manholes, pressure manholes, and again, that main trunk line, your main discharge out of the township, that is going to need some help to protect it from hydrogen sulfide. Next slide. These are a few photos just from the pipe inspection on that gravity main on the discharge, showing some of the buildup of hydrogen sulfide that you've got in that system. And what it does ultimately, it breaks down the surface of the concrete and it starts spalling off. Once it starts spalling off, you can start to get exposed rebar. That's the reinforcing steel that kind of helps hold the pipe together. And you start losing your cross-sectional integrity and really the strength of the pipe. What it could lead to ultimately is catastrophic failure of the pipe and a lot of issues in your system with maintain and service. So next slide, Sean. This is some manhole inspection photos. They're kind of dark, so it's a little hard to see, but just showing similar findings within the manholes of the hydrogen sulfide buildup on the wall of the structures. So I'll have Kyle kind of discuss some of the alternatives that are identified in the plan.
So once again, with the alternatives, this is part of the requirements of the SRF, that there are certain alternatives that are required to be looked at. The first of those is no action. So basically self-explanatory. We do absolutely nothing with the problems that we're seeing and let things continue. Now, as Mike talked about, that can lead to failures. The second is a complete replacement of the existing infrastructure. We'll get into some more specifics of the monetary values of that, but basically what you're looking at is removing all of that pipe, placing new stuff in. That's going to be a lot more expensive and a lot more invasive. You're going to have to be, open cut trenching everything. So it's just not as realistic or efficient of a solution. The optimum performance of existing facilities is basically, kind of as it suggests, running things optimally, running your existing infrastructure, which right now with the work of the DPW and Director Potter, as well as Oakland County, that option is already being done. So it's not really a new option. So then the last option, which is what we are discussing tonight, is the repair and rehabilitation of the system with cured in place lining. So what we're looking at is repair and provide rehabilitation to the existing gravity mains, gravity manholes, and pressure manholes, as we've said, as we've shown on the map. And for this, we're proposing to use full-length and sectional CIP pipe sewer main lining to address the deterioration of the gravity mains, as well as the CIP lining to rehabilitate both the gravity and the pressure manhole structures for the defects. And the next slide, I'll talk about what exactly that cured in place process is. So cured in place lining is a trenchless technology. So you take your lining and it comes in through the manhole, as you can see in the top right picture, and it goes along then the pipe inside and is cured using heat or UV. So you essentially are forming a new pipe inside the existing pipes. You can see a picture of an example of before and after lining, and that's going to be a new rigid pipe. So it's both, structurally sound and is taking care of the hydrogen sulfide.
Yeah, because it's an inert material that won't be susceptible to the damage from hydrogen sulfide, so. These are just some costs that were a requirement of the alternatives, yeah. Yes,
Hey,
sir.
just a quick question. That new lining that you just showed us, how long does that last?
So the manufacturer and the installers will say about 50 years.
50?
Yeah, they can't tell you much more than that because it hasn't been around for that long.
Okay, it's a newer.
Yeah, it's definitely a newer technology, but
Thank you.
It may last much longer.
that's the hope and the anticipation. I mean, we just don't have the data to support it officially. So this table, I'm going to struggle to read it a little bit here, but it's cost breakdowns on the 4 options. And again, the no action alternative, well, there's no cost to doing nothing unless you have a catastrophic failure. Option 2, when we talked about complete replacement of the infrastructure that we're looking at rehabbing, you're over $4.6 million in construction costs. And I'd venture to guess that's probably low with today's market and the way things are going. Option 3, we really didn't cost that because, like we said, we're already implementing best management practices and those type of items, so nothing really we can do additional there. Option 4, we had approximately $2.3 million in construction costs for the lining and repair of the manholes that we've identified in the project plan here. Next slide. So talking about the total SRF loan budget that we'd be looking at if the township choose to move forward with this and when we move forward with bidding and design of the project. Considering design, construction costs, contract administration, inspection, your legal fees, bond fees, about 2.8, round up to $2.9 million for the estimated project cost. So one of the nice things and why the program, the SRF and specifically Cwsrf program is interesting and appealing is because of the low interest rate that you might get. Eagle advertises about 2%. They can't guarantee it every time. Your current DWRF program that you're on for your water main improvements right now came in at 1.875 interest rate. We used that for the purpose of the calculations here. With the project costs that I identified on the previous slide and that 1.875 interest rate, you'd be looking at a principal and interest payment annually of $169,000 so with some change.
Annually.
Yeah,
Mike, did you base that on 20 years or 30 years?
20 years. We'll show the repayment schedule in just a second here. Principal and interest payments will be funded by the operation and maintenance budget. That's per Director Potter. That's the intent right now anyways. Bond market open interest rate estimate 3.75%. I'm thinking that might actually be a little bit low, given some of the recent changes. But again, for the purposes of calculation, we use that here. Comparing the two interest rates, all other things being equal, the SRF program would achieve a annual savings of $32,954. So nice to take advantage of the lower interest rate if we can secure that financing. The next slide just kind of shows that savings kind of broken down, kind of cumulative over time. And over the 20-year period of the loan, $659,000 savings, again, over a 3.75% interest rate. And then I'll let Kyle get into some of the impacts.
So as mentioned, with the CIP lining, it's a trenchless technology, which means we don't have to open cut any roads to, take care of it. So that's going to reduce the traffic impacts in residential areas during construction. There obviously might be still some minimal impacts, but that's greatly reduced. Another thing we look at is endangered species. And within this area, we do have a number of endangered species: the eastern Mississauga rattlesnake, the Indiana bat, the northern long-eared bat, the raid bean, which is a mussel, the snuffbox mussel, and the Poweshiek skipperling. So we're not anticipating there to be any adverse effects on these. Within the area, there's no critical habitats that exist. And once again, because there aren't the excavations, there isn't going to be the ground disturbance that you would often see with construction. And any type of disturbance would be restored to the original conditions. Another thing with this is, as of right now, there's no proposed rate increases to fund the project. So should the board decide to move forward with this, here's just kind of a schedule of what we're looking at for the funding, and these are still not, exact dates yet. So December of this year would be when the draft plan and specifications would be due. Then February of next year would be an environmental assessment, submittal of the permit applications, and final submittal of plans and specifications, which then March 2023 would be the EGLE approval of the project plan, the approval of the plans and specifications, and when bids would be coming in for the work. Looking at construction to start July of next year, and then wrap up by October of 2024. Any questions?
Okay, not just, I'm going to let the public ask the questions. This is public hearing, and then when we go out of public hearing, then the board will ask questions. Any questions at this time from the public regarding this project? As you can see, it's kind of a unique technology. I had the firsthand experience in the freezing cold to see it happen. It was very impressive, and it makes a lot of sense because now we're not disrupting neighborhoods and all of that type of stuff. It's actually pretty cool stuff. So any questions from anyone in the public? You need to identify yourself. You have to speak up, stand up and speak up, sir.
John Hunt, how many people, what percentage of people actually have sewers in White Lake Township?
The number, yeah,
Between 10 and 15%.
yeah, it's like 10 to 12% or something like that. But the system itself, because of its age, obviously we have to maintain it, and we don't want to become a news story, so to speak, and we have an opportunity.
I'm just curious, we're still that low on percentage?
Yes, not quite there yet, yeah.
Yet we got a big $3 million for.
That's paid by the sewer users.
Yeah, well, I understand that.
Yep.
I've paid and paid.
Yeah. Yeah, paid by the users. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Seeing none, I will make a motion to close public hearing. Looking for support?
Support.
I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Public Hearing is now closed. I will now turn to the board for questions. Mr. Roman.
Yeah, guys, we are seeing bidding on all kinds of projects coming in sky high. I mean, like 50% more than what you'd expect. What's your thought on that? And I guess if the bid's come in too high, we can always put it on hold, correct?
Bidding scares me to death. It's just,
It's nuts
you
right
just
now.
don't know what to expect. I mean, it just seems like higher and higher and higher.
Does it make sense to wait to go out to bid?
I don't think anybody can predict what's going to happen in the future. That's the real issue. And as Mike stated, doing nothing, you're risking a major failure. And a major failure of any of the Phase 1 sanitary would be an ecological disaster for White Lake Township, not to mention an economical disaster for White Lake Township.
What I can say about the project is it's incredibly scalable. So if we do go out to bids and the unit price on the repairs are higher, we could scale it back and do the first, few thousand feet or whatever it is. I mean, that's most subject to the hydrogen sulfide damage. You're not solving your problem, but you're taking care of some of it, the most critical part. So, I mean, that's one thing we could do.
So the SAW grant report, the asset management plan that we developed through the SAW grant, as Mike stated, identified projects and ranked them based on need, level of severity. And, this project plan incorporated essentially the first 5 years, the most, essential projects in the asset management plan. But, it could be scaled up or down or any kind of way. That was just, what we felt like was an appropriate start. And, we could go from there.
Yeah, I think we really don't have any other option but to move forward. I think it's prudent because the cost of doing nothing will be extraordinarily high. And I do not intend to be kicking that can down the road. So it makes the best sense to do at least the most problematic areas of this project. There may be some areas that we may have to, postpone depending on what the bids are. And we won't know what they are until we go through this process, we get everything put together and we put it out for bid. So this is kind of the chicken and the egg type of thing. So we have to move forward through this process to get to that process and then make those decisions at that time as a board. We really have no other alternate plan. The low interest money that is available through the state makes the most sense, although I know some of the numbers might be changing a little bit, but they're still typically ahead of the private sector when these funds are available. The one project, actually the two projects that we have going on right now are both at very, very favorable interest rates, and it makes the best sense for us to try to utilize this problem. So it's definitely something that's worth looking at. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Powell? Oh, Counselor?
Can I just ask a couple of questions about procedure? So today, the township is being asked to approve the plan that you developed by way of resolution and designating Aaron Potter as the individual responsible for the plan. And then there's also an application for the grant. And that's something that it's the intent to apply form.
Yeah, the intent to apply has already been completed. That got sent in January. The rest of it is going through, what you'd be essentially doing is going through, completing the project plan. In order to get that into Eagle, they need a resolution by the township to acknowledge that they're planning to move forward with it.
And then you'd indicated earlier in your presentation that there was $800 million available for the funding. Is that in the state of Michigan or is that the United States?
I can clarify that, because I don't remember.
I'm just-
I believe it was the state of Michigan, because that's what it was, that's how it came into us. It's actually a lot more funding than's available on the water side. So I think you have a better chance of securing this financing than the water, to be completely frank. I believe it's state of Michigan, but I'd like to just kind of confirm that.
And then my last question is the timing of eligibility and expenditure of those funds. So if the township moves forward with the plan, is there, I imagine it's kind of a first come, first serve evaluation, or
So-
and what's the time frame in which a decision has to be made?
So a couple things will happen on this. You'll submit the project plan for evaluation by Eagle. You'll be scored and ranked in comparison to all the other projects, and they're going to fund projects for whatever they have money for. So if you make that fundable range, you can move forward with your project. As far as time frame, I've had SRF programs extend 4 years, and there's been a lot of times we've gotten extensions prior to starting, just because of, some shifting dynamics and things changing, so.
We would designate which quarter and year we would want to, that we intended to move forward with the project, with our application. So, for example, with our DWRF project that we're working on right now on the water side, we designated, I believe Q3 2022 funding. So, I'm sorry, 2021 funding. But that's part of the application process. And as Mike stated, the state, it is $800 million, and that is what the state has available. The state takes all of the project plans that are submitted, ranks them all basically as, highest to lowest fundability. And then they will fund, if they have $800 million available, they'll fund $800 million from the top down. There is also a very slight chance that some of the grant funds that, through the America's Water Infrastructure Act and other grants available, are all getting funneled through the state revolving funds, as they have the structure in the organization to disperse and manage those funds. So, but we don't know if any of that's going to be fundable. Most of that's going to disadvantaged communities, but we certainly try to get some of that money for White Lake Township. And that was one of our intentions on these project plans, was to make an attempt to get some of that funding.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Powell?
Yes, if we vote for this tonight, are we then also approving DLZ to be the engineers of record to design the construction drawings, or when do the construction drawings have to be done in the approval process?
You don't have to. The rankings are going to come out in August, September timeframe, and then that's about the time you'll know whether you're in the fundable range. You're welcome to go out to bid on this at any point before that, or at that time when you know you're going to get funded.
But this vote tonight is just strictly for
Moving to project plan.
approving the project plan for submittal, not necessarily approving the construction drawings to be started, correct?
That's correct.
This is not an engineering contract.
Okay. Then I also had a question whether or not, I noticed you have proposed the CIP cured in place. There are a number of other slip linings that are out there. I noticed that the unit prices on this is fairly high. Didn't know why you lighted on the CIP versus another type process. Do we have some structural damage that we're trying to repair, or is it just strictly protection of the pipe from the hydrogen sulfide?
There is some structural damage. some of the video we have is not exactly recent either. So, I mean, I think we'd need some more recent video. A lot of it's from 2010 timeframe, so a lot can happen in those 12 years. But, I mean, I like the CIP product. I do realize there's other options out there, and as part of the design process, I mean, we could look at the videos and do a value engineering of different segments and see if there's different technologies that might work and be more cost-effective in those different segments. I mean, generally, I like the CIP lining. You try to maintain as much of the cross-section as you can. And it's proven to be a pretty good product, and again, inert to the hydrogen sulfide that we're trying to combat.
The CIP technology that was that was spec'd here is the same technology that we used on Union Lake Road, Shotwell, and East Ox Hill.
And again, we're not bidding anything right now, and that specification was only given as a baseline, so we know that this is what we'll call as our worst-case scenario, and if there is a more competitive bid, or should we choose to look at an alternate material at that time, do so. Again, tonight's action is merely moving the plan forward so that we can get in the queue of the funding. Without this plan, we don't even qualify to apply for the funding. So that's pretty much where we're at right now, and at that time, DLC and/or whomever would put a proposal forth to the Township Board for their engineering services, and the board take action on it at that time, and not at this time.
Correct.
And then my last question is that, well, I guess I have two. The pressure manhole repairs. I guess I'm not familiar with the pressure manhole. Usually the pressure pipe flows right through the manhole and doesn't impact the manhole itself. What have you found in the pressure sewer?
So a lot of the manholes that we identified for repairs there, some of them are fairly straightforward, and you just have some fractures of your adjustment rings and stuff like that. But a lot of the pressure sewer manholes have air relief valves, and those air relief valves are venting the same sewer gases that are affecting the pipe structures with the hydrogen sulfide and everything. So that's a large portion of what those are.
All right.
More exposure.
There seemed to be a conclusion in the report that we won't be extending, we won't be maybe making a priority in the extension of sanitary sewers at the rate that might be beneficial to the flows experienced in the sewer. So we're looking to repair the sanitary sewers, but maybe not necessarily anticipate any flows in the sewers that change the hydrogen sulfide production aspect. Could we resolve a lot of that, or at least mitigate a lot of that, by starting a program to entice homeowners and property owners to connect into the sanitary sewer to increase the flows in the sewer, thus putting maybe the monies into a win-win, getting more people to connect, that saves the environment, as well as increasing the flows in the sewers that reduce the hydrogen sulfide production. Maybe a combination of what we're proposing, as well as having a program to entice people to connect into the sanitary sewer.
Again, I think that's something that could be discussed at a future date, and we have had a program here where we're trying to get more users on the line, and ultimately that would be another program that the board could come up with of a sort, as long as a funding mechanism is available, that we could utilize that, because obviously the more affluent there's going through the line, the less gas there is.
So that's what I was hinting at. Obviously, you picked that up.
Oh, yeah.
And
I used to do
maybe
that stuff, remember?
maybe the sanitary sewer subcommittee could discuss that and
I believe
initiate
that's a
something to
very
present
good
to this
discussion.
board.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's where I was going, Mr. Supervisor, so,
I'd
all
like to
right.
comment on that real quick before we move on.
Yes, Mr. Power.
So right now, we're piloting an H2S control system on in this area, going down from the Myers Station, Worthington Crossing. We're treating all of the manholes and individual grinder stations through everything west of the intersection at Circus. And we're also ODA-logging those results at the fallout at Circus. Our ODA-log results have actually shed light on something that was a little bit counterintuitive, in that we thought the increased flows would reduce the dwell time and reduce the H2S. What our finding is that the increased flow simply just increases the H2S. So the H2S is more of a byproduct of chemistry rather than quantity. And in addition to that, I do 100% agree with Trustee Powell that it would be beneficial for the township to figure out a way of funding an overall mechanism to help more folks get connected to the sanitary sewer. That's kind of outside the scope of this project plan, essentially to fall underneath the sewer rehabilitation aspect and be fundable under SRF, really just focuses on reducing the ability of H2S to damage our critical infrastructure.
I don't want to interrupt this train of thought, but we're getting off target here in the sense that I really want to try to meet the objective that we have tonight, but there will be further conversation, and it is good subject matter. Are there any other questions from the board at this time regarding this? Mr. Roman.
Yeah, so Aaron, new main that we put in today, sewer main?
Yes.
Is that going to have to be relined in 20 years? Or is it a different material than what we put in way back? And if it is still concrete, can't you buy the stuff pre-lined with this stuff to make it last longer?
Good questions. Not sure if anybody's making pre-lined sewer pipe. A lot of new sewer pipe is actually made out of plastic materials.
Are we using that now?
We are. There is probably some sewer pipe out there that is going in that may need to be relined. Most of it is all plastic materials nowadays.
Okay, so
I
we're using
know
plastic.
I don't know of a whole lot of.
It's got to have an average life longer than 20 years.
The larger the pipe, the more we used concrete. Now the smaller, more subdivision type pipe is plastic. So.
And we're not placing any of the large diameter main at this point.
Right.
The main issues, I mean, most of the areas that we're building gravity sanitary sewer now are neighborhoods, new neighborhoods, where it's inexpensive to put that main in, right after they've land balanced and mass graded the sites. It's almost economically impossible to build those types of systems in, lake areas. So most of the new new sanitary systems going in the lake districts now are all low-pressure force main, because those are plastic materials that can be directionally drilled.
Right.
Okay. Back to the subject matter at hand. I would like to entertain a motion. Mr. Powell?
Well, this is absolutely essential, in my opinion, that the township undertake this. We're responsible for the sanitary sewer system, and we're hoping that we address some of the costs of the sanitary sewer system in our negotiations with Commerce Township and Oakland County as well. So, but it's essential that we maintain the integrity of this sanitary sewer system. So, Mr. Supervisor, I move approval of the resolution adopting a final project plan for the sanitary sewer system improvements and designating an authorized project representative, which would be Aaron Potter. Therefore, approving Resolution 22-021.
Support.
I have a motion, I have support. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much, everyone. I know it's a rather involved and expensive endeavor. However, it is important.
Yeah, I was going to knock that report out in about 15, 20 minutes. And,
all 700 pages?
Yeah, all 700 pages, yeah.
Yeah, it made real great, I didn't have to.
Easy read.
And put me to bed every night, all week.
We're just going to throw it out, absolutely.
I can get it online if I need it.
Well, I can too.
Whole business. 10A, second reading of the Black Rock rezoning. Mr. O'Neill.
Good evening. So tonight you have before you the second reading for the rezoning of the property that is at 9501 Highland Road, which is just south of M59 and east of White Banks Boulevard. It was before you for your first reading on April 19th. It was at the Planning Commission on March 17th for a public hearing and their recommendation. And just as a reminder, at that time, they recommended approval of this request, which would rezone this 1 acre from local business to general business. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I think for the sake of the public, for those who may not have known what this is, there is one parcel that is on the general business, another parcel is on local business. The site will consume both parcels. The project as it is has the ability to go on either parcel. It's just a zoning cleanup, trying to get things together. The critique of where the parking goes, where this goes, where that goes, how many bushes, how many trees, this and everything is not here and not today. It's at the Planning Commission presentation of when the site plan comes in, which will be, when will it be at the Planning Commission?
I was going to add that we do have a plan. The first review of that preliminary site plan wrapped up yesterday, and those comments were sent back to the applicant with direction to revise and resubmit. So the earliest that the plan would make it to the Planning Commission would be at a June meeting. We meet, Planning Commission, not we, but the Planning Commission meets in 2 nights right here in this room, and it is not on the agenda. So I would say June 2nd's even pushing it, probably more like June 16th would be more realistic for them to revise their plans. And
That would be the meeting that if you have a concern as how it may or may not impact where you're at, that would be the meeting that you go to, because that'll be the meeting that'll actually have ink on paper that you can actually see it and understand. Everything else is speculation until that drawing is reviewed. So tonight's merely a practice in putting both parcels under the same zoning, so it's consistent, and it just makes more sense and it's easier for us internally. Mr. Powell.
Question for Sean. If the rezoning was not taken, was not approved tonight, could this project still proceed on the zoning of the category of the local business and/or the general business?
yes.
Okay. The next question to that is if the southern portion of the property that is being requested to be rezoned was left local business instead of general business, what changes would be required to whatever goes on that southern parcel from what you can do in general business or what they intend to do in general business versus what could be done at a local business?
So without getting into many of the specifics with the site plan, a parking lot is proposed to go on the portion of this based on the plans that we've seen. The shaded area on your screen, which is a property that's being requested for rezoning tonight, is all parking lot. Buffering, but parking lot. The building itself is located into the corner on lot 9. You can see faintly in this area and push kind of up into the northwest corner. So whether that parking lot zone, local business or general business, any portion of it, I believe that they could use it for parking. The use of a restaurant is also allowed in local business, just not with service of alcohol, which is what they intend to do. And there's an outdoor seating component that's being proposed as well. So I guess to answer your question, any portion of it left local business could still be used as a parking lot. We prefer that a site not have split zoning. It's just not clean. And if there were reuse of the property, it could cause issues. We don't go out and necessarily have survey points laid out in a parking lot. This is a little easier, and there probably are survey points out here, but we prefer it just be cleanly, uniformly rezoned. And that was, when they came in initially, something we had asked them to do, is to pursue rezoning, to unify the zoning all as general business, just to make it easier and cleaner for them going forward. But it could remain as local business.
Actually, the reason why I asked it, and you answered it, in that there's no detriment to the neighbors or to this board or anything else to rezone this to general
Yeah,
business.
either way, they can still do the same.
So the rezoning is not the issue. As you mentioned, Mr. Supervisor, it's the site plan issues that are going to be germane to this. Just as an example, and I just want to throw it out there so the Planning Commission can discuss it a little bit more. In our minutes of last month, I had mentioned that maybe the lighting could be low, and I just wanted to make sure that the Planning Commission didn't necessarily think that I meant low lumens, but potentially if that is parking lot down there for the employees, maybe the lighting can be the low level at chest level high to where it doesn't shoot across the wall that's going to be there. And so,
And because it's come up, I'll just briefly say that the comments that I read through yesterday, the reports and the reviews do indicate that type of direction to the applicant in this area in particular.
good, thank you. And
Bollard type lighting.
That's the kind of, that's,
Right, and
I
that
heard what I wanted to.
was a comment that I made at the last meeting, was about employee parking, potentially trying to minimize the impact.
That is also in that letter of recommendation.
Excellent.
And we'll see how that works out. Okay, that being said, any other questions from the board on the rezoning? Looking for a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we approve the change of zoning from local business to general business for parcel number 12-23-129-007 as presented.
I'll take that as a motion, and I will support it. A motion, we have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I guess I messed up. Maybe one of the property owners, we
Oh,
didn't
I
ask
don't
if
have a problem.
anybody.
We can take a comment if there is one on the zoning process, but I think I just tried to make it very, very clear that really where all your concerns really need to be conveyed is when the planning commission has that plan in front of them and in front of you as a public forum. Because we can't comment on it because we don't even have it. So,
Mr. Supervisor, any neighbors, and I've spoken with a couple of them who would like to see the plan and the review letters that were generated and sent back to the applicant yesterday, are more than welcome to come in at any time and sit down, and some of them have done just that, so.
Good,
okay.
good, thank you.
Okay, so we shall move on to the second reading of the Traffic and Vehicle Ordinance, Chapter 36, Article Vehicle Code. If you recall, Chief Keller is not available to be here tonight, but this is just the second reading that we added the one community on it so that it's all kind of sort of codified in one respect. In case there was ever a challenge, it can come back and say, well, how come our sub is not on there or this one is not? And I know that question came up as part of this. So this is just moving it on and adopting it. So with that, I would any questions from the board? Okay, with that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the amendment to the Traffic and Vehicle Ordinance, Chapter 36, Article 2 of Vehicle Codes. I make that in the form of a motion, looking for support. Support. All right, motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, let's have it. Second reading of the amendment to Fire Code Ordinance, Chapter 18, Article 2, Fire Code. Chief, I kind of read through that, and I see that you put some little caveats in there, a red line, and I don't know if any of the board members have questions. It looks like you've kind of set it up where it kind of gives you a little bit of lateral movement to decide, on the case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's true. We added some additional language just to set some thresholds to eliminate any chances of selective billing. I got with the township attorney, we went through this, and I even shared this with Trustee Smith.
Thank you.
And I think it's really fair that we do this. And just keep in mind, this is not any form of billing to the resident, it's to the business itself. I just want to keep bringing that back up, that's all, but it's important.
Very good. Any questions from the board?
No, I just want to thank you, Chief. Thanks for your hard work on it. And Lisa, I do appreciate the second go around on this is a lot better, so I thank you.
Trustee Smith, would you like to adopt this?
Sure. I'll make a motion to update ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Article 2, Fire Code of the White Lake Township Code of Ordinance, Section 113.11, request for non-emergency assistance.
Support?
We have motion with support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We're going to have a squeaky clean town here. Consideration of preliminary site plan for Hypershine Car Wash. Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you.
That is by far one of the nicest looking buildings for a car wash that I have ever seen in my life.
Quite a bit of brick on it. I can,
Like all brick,
If you're
you know.
starting with the elevation, I will scroll
And
down.
these drawings don't do it justice. If you had a color rendering, I don't know if you have one, but I saw a little scribble that somebody had sent over at one point. It's a beautiful looking building. And it runs east and west, so there's minimal invasiveness to the folks anywhere really around it at all. And the distance from the back of that building to the closest neighbor, it's a football field
It
length.
is longer than that. It is
Yeah.
400 feet.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
All the process is inside, too, and the noise, there's not going to be noise outside, correct? Except for the
That's right.
vacuums?
No, even the new, I was reading an article in one of my construction magazines about how the decibel readings and all these types of equipments for different places, and including car washes, are now being required from OSHA to be at a lower level.
Oh, great.
So not only because of the neighbors, but moreover for the employees that actually work in the plant.
They should have raided my Sears shop vac, because you got, we won't go there.
I got the same one, that's another story. The screaming demon, yeah. So,
To
yeah.
that point, though, and I'll begin there and work my way back, the doors facing east and west, which you indicated.
Correct.
They do. They face other similarly zoned property, and they don't face back toward the neighbors. I mean,
Excellent.
some of the concerns that the neighbors had at the planning commission meeting of April 21st, when they had their public hearing on this, this request, and they considered their preliminary site plan, was just that they were going to be impacted by noise. And, they're really not going to see a whole lot in the distance. There's going to be a fence, and there's going to be landscaping, much more landscaping that's shown here, and possibly some landscaping south of the fence, nearer to the neighbors. But, on April 21st, the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing, and several neighbors did come out and share their feelings. Some had environmental concerns about the type of products are being used to wash the cars, and the applicant can speak more about that if you have questions for them. This project is on the sewer system, and so, there is a reclamation system, I believe, associated with this, but ultimately, any waste does discharge into the sewer system, not into a septic field that would in any way affect groundwater in this area. The Planning Commission approved the request for special land use and recommended preliminary site plan approval, subject to all the outstanding conditions, as well as subject to the ZBA giving their approval of a couple of items. And Mr. Powell, I don't know if you want to touch on that at all, but this is the plan that went to the Planning Commission and to the ZBA. One thing the Planning Commission had asked is for them to improve the cross-access opportunity here. They had a bit of a debate on how the site would work with cross-access. Our cross-access plan requires that every effort be made to make connections parallel to M59, so to the east and west. And, this plan, as you can see, shows the vehicles moving in from 59, moving westerly, and then southerly, and then in, through the site in a counterclockwise direction. So their site is, it doesn't really function well with that, because it could only really accept one-way traffic through here, kind of as a bailout lane if there's ever a connection made to the west. Property is vacant currently, and so it's not an issue today. And to the east, there is a dance studio that's long been in that location. And while we agreed and they agreed it was important to connect it to this property line, it may be quite a bit of time before that road connects across its frontage. But I'll show you this plan. This is a revised plan that the applicant sent, I believe, within a couple of days of the meeting, showing that they will indeed make that extension, build it to the property lines as the ordinance indicates they should. They've widened it out from 20 feet in width to 24 feet, so it's configured more like a standard drive would be. Let me back up here. One issue that went to the zoning board of appeals was dumpster location. They don't really have a good spot for the dumpster. You'll see this dashed line here that says, I think it says OH. So these are overhead lines which kind of bookend the site. They have an envelope really between M59 and these overhead lines unless they want to pay significant dollars and wait probably an even more significant amount of time for DTE to move these things. So they've kind of restricted themselves to the front, which is good and it's bad. They've got several acres of land that really won't be used, but they've got a significant buffer. I mean, I believe that the distance is over 400 feet from the back of the building to the closest property line to the south. So in a way, it's kind of a benefit. There was discussion by a couple planning commissioners that the lines could be moved, but the thought by most of the planning commission is that we don't want the lines to move. We want that to kind of be the limit of development for them, and they're okay with that. So the ZBA had to consider whether or not the dumpster could be this close. The planning commission said, we're not going to let it be this close, and so, you need to move it. And that was kind of what the message they sent to the ZBA. Obviously, a trash truck has to get in here to access it. So this was where the ZBA and the planning commission both sort of felt that it was appropriate. The planning commission thought that it made sense, and the ZBA gave it the approval when they considered it on April 28th. So there's some other, I guess, specific things. I don't know if you want to get into a lot of the engineering at this point, but this is the plan that will go back through final if it's approved tonight, showing some of the things the planning commission, ZBA both wanted to see in this plan. There was some driveway realignment that was a part of the trip that they had to the ZBA. That's going to involve MDOT. So the ZBA gave them some approvals. Planning commission actually had the ability to make a finding, which is rare. Usually when a finding needs to be made or a decision needs to be made on an item in a plan that differs from an ordinance requirement, it's done at the ZBA, but the ordinance specifically allowed the planning commission to make a finding to allow a driveway at this location. But, ultimately, as we know, MDOT gets the final say. So it may be shifting a little bit more once they have their final word on it. So if you want to hear from the applicant, I believe they're here, and would probably be happy to answer any questions. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them as well. I know the supervisor touched on, wrong one, touched on the elevation. I think the only other plan I was going to show was the landscape plan, which is going to be, I think, improved, but just, you were looking at just lines on paper. This, maybe now, these symbols will kind of give you an idea of how this will be landscaped up. Obviously, when this drive connects, some of this landscaping will need to be relocated, but the applicant didn't seem to have any concern with adding landscaping to the plan in order to make it a better plan and to make everyone who was concerned about the level of landscaping happy. So I don't really have anything further to add unless you have any questions for me.
I do not. Any of the board members do at this time? Okay. You fellas have anything you want to say?
No, but I will say also to the landscaping thing, we were a little.
You're going to have to
come up here and put your
to the
name on the
microphone
record, please.
and state your name because they can't pick up on the recording.
My name's Sean Doherty. I'm the project manager for Hypershine. So there was one more thing on the landscaping that we did. At the beginning, we kept it 10 feet back from the water main because that's just what we thought we had to do. But then they told us at that meeting we could go up to 3 feet. So that we were within the what the ordinance required. That was the last thing that we had to do.
Okay.
Yeah, just to kind of clarify, they were very deficient on landscaping along M59 because they were trying to stay 10 feet away. Obviously, these fellows here are going to come to you guys with a different request to fix main if you're building putting trees on top of built water and sewer mains. So we do want as much room as as possible. So I think what he's indicating is that they've been able to meet the intent of the ordinance by placing the landscaping back, just not 10 feet away. It's maybe 3, 4, 5 feet away.
Correct.
Counselor?
I just have a quick curiosity question. I live really close to a Jack's, and I know blasphemy. It looks like the same type of configuration. My question is, at Jack's, at the end of the cycle where when cars drive through the car wash, there are people there drying the cars right on Woodward. I'm curious, you've got it planned for drying or no?
The machine does it, yeah, with inside the building. We don't have anybody out.
So
doing
Jax
that.
has that too, where they have the blower that dries, but then once you get out, they physically dry it with cloths.
Yeah, we don't have any people
You're
do
not
that.
proposing that at all?
No.
And Lisa, that actually came up with the planning commission as well. They had asked that same question, though it's far away from M59 and wouldn't pose any kind of an issue. It was just something that came out, and I
It's right
think,
here. So they'd exit
see.
here.
So they're gonna exit, if you look at my screen, they're gonna exit up out here. There's quite a distance, but that same question was asked, and it is a significant drying setup at the end, so there is no need, and I think they expect quite a few of the folks there getting their car washed to pull in and use the vacuums, which are located in this kind of central parking area.
Okay,
I had a quick question, Rick.
certainly.
Just curious, do you guys have an expectation as to cars per day that you're expecting?
Our CFO does all that, and the CEO, the pro forma. Normally on a site like this, I would have to know more about it, but typically you get about 500 to, I think, 200 to 500 cars a day.
How many?
200 to 500.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good luck.
kind of typical. Okay, at this time, do you have anything you'd like to add, young man? Okay, all right. Is there anyone out there in the public that has a comment or question? Okay. Yes, you need to come up to the podium and identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
My name is David Gian. I live at 9315 Steep Hollow Drive. It's one of the streets that backs up to where the proposed car wash is. I have a few concerns. One of them is environmental. There was something that was actually in the township Facebook page about the Huron River watershed and where most of the pollution comes from. And it comes from parking lots, right? Eventually finds its way into the watershed in things like our lake. Because I live in Twin Lakes Village, and there's two lakes there, Tull Lake 1, Tull Lake 2. One of the ways that you can minimize some of the effect of that is more trees, more vegetation. And what I'd like to see or propose is additional plantings behind the vinyl fence between the car wash, proposed car wash, and the subdivision. And it'll do two things. One, it'll help soak up some of that runoff, and also it could act as an additional noise barrier. If there's 500 cars per day going through there, there's going to be some noise going to the subdivision. So that's the concern I have. I'm also concerned about the traffic, like everybody else in the township is, and hopefully the Michigan DOT will come up with some type of a plan to minimize the impact of that. But it's very difficult to make a left turn right now onto 59. And I'm assuming half of those cars are going to want to make a left turn either in or out of that car wash. So those are the concerns that I have. Thank you.
Very good. Sean, just going back to the planning commission for the final.
Yes, it is.
Blessing? Okay. I just think these types of things that they might want to take a peek at of consideration. Now, to just settle your thought process, this is a contained system, so there is no water that gets out. It's basically within the system, and it has a recirculatory system, and it has a storm water discharge system that ultimately they can discharge into, with a restrictor, I believe, into the county storm.
My understanding is that the byproducts of the car wash are treated internally, and you're going to use a sanitary sewer to get rid of that. My biggest concern is the runoff from the parking lot.
Okay, all right.
All right, and that's going into the storm sewer, and I believe there's a retention basin at the rear of the parcel, and then it's eventually going to go into the storm sewer on M59. But where does that storm sewer dump? It goes into the Huron River watershed.
No, I understand. Yeah.
So-
Yeah, these are concerns we have, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Not a question, but just a comment that I think is worth highlighting again is certainly the safety and the traffic flow of this area, Fisk Farm and M59 being one of our most dangerous intersections in the township. So I hope that is just, really well thought out and taken the time to be really looked at well. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. That being said, I'll entertain a motion from the board. Mr. Nolan? Approve similar.
Make a motion in consideration of preliminary site plan for Hypershine Car Wash,
Subject
to Planning Commission's
comments, administrative review.
And all the consultants.
And all the consultants.
Right. I'll support that.
We have a motion or support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Crest Award contract for Park and Recreation Master Plan update. Whoopie dang, it's 5 years already.
It is. And it's actually was 2008 was the last time we did this with the help of a consultant.
Holy smoke. That's right. I remember when we did.
Right, so it's been about 14 years. By the time this is adopted, it'll be about 15 years. And it was a major rewrite at that time, and that's kind of what we're looking at now, is we're going to really give it a robust rewrite, which we think at this point it is needed, as does the Parks and Rec Committee. They invited 6 different firms who have a background in this type of work to participate. Only 2 of them, Groya Consulting and Beckett and Rader, responded. And you can see on your memo from Justin dated May 12th that Groya Consulting had a price of $29,375 plus $500 in expenses, and Beckett and Rader had a price of $39,285 plus $468 in expenses. The Parks Committee interviewed both firms before receiving their prices, and Groya came highly recommended by Oakland County, by Commerce Township, and by West Bloomfield, where they've done a bit of work recently, and their price was about $10,000 less. Justin spoke with the folks at Groya, and they had agreed to actually do it for a flat fee of $29,000. So they reduced their bid by $875,000. This falls kind of in line with what we had anticipated the cost to be. And so the Parks Committee did unanimously recommend that the Township Board approve the contract to go with Groya Consulting with a not-to-exceed cost of $29,000. Just to give you a little bit more history, we were able to, in 2013 and 2018, at the staff level, update the plan that was rewritten in 2008, and it is anticipated that 5 years from now, the staff would again be doing a more minor update. The Parks Master Plan is required to be updated, similar to the Land Use Master Plan, and as you guys are fully aware, we've received quite a bit of consideration from the state and other funds because of the quality of our master plan and the fact that we're keeping it up. So when you consider the millions of dollars that have come into this township over the last 10 years or so, because of good plans like this, I think that this is a pretty reasonable consideration, and look forward to hopefully the support of the board and working with Groya, and primarily Justin and the Parks Committee working with Groya to update this plan.
And for the sake of the public, oftentimes, the very first question that's asked when we apply for a grant, do you have a master parks plan? And if the answer is no, oftentimes they say, well, go get one and come back and see us again. So it's really a pretty much a prerequisite to any application, much like the grant application process that we have to go for the DWRF fund. So some of these things are very competitive, so they do want to make sure that if we're going to do something, that we actually have a solid plan and we have direction so that we can execute it with as much precision as possible when it comes to fruition. So far, so good. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Roman.
Sean, would it make sense to do a 10-year plan instead of a 5-year plan?
You have to do a 5-year plan.
Got to be updated
It does.
every 5 years.
And it doesn't have to be robustly updated. It just has to be reviewed. And, sort of like the land use master plan, we have to do a review of it and notate somewhere in the file and in the minutes of a meeting that it was reviewed and accepted and found to be in good order. So with the kind of ever-changing landscape, pun intended, of our parks, I mean, we're always doing something with the acquisition of a piece of property, the improvement of that piece of property or another one, or a pathway extension. Every 5-6 years, there are significant changes to document.
I know we get somewhat of a discount when we sign up for our audits, because we usually sign up for 5 years. I'm just wondering if there may have been a way to get them to commit to doing this as well as another 5-year plan in 5 years, quoting us a price today.
That hadn't been contemplated, and I think the Parks Committee rather enjoys going out every 5 years and really seeing what's available. We've never used the firm that's being recommended today. We've actually used the one who finished second, and they do an excellent job. This came down to the fact that both had an excellent proposal, and one was $10,000 less, and came highly recommended. So while I understand what you're saying, Mr. Roman, I think if we were doing this annually, then some sort of arrangement like that would be maybe easier to kind of contemplate.
Yep.
But
Yeah, like.
I think it's difficult to know. And in 5 years, as I mentioned a minute ago, I think the plan is to do this in-house again in 5 years, and there'd be no fee
Oh, do
to
you
the
think we can
township.
do it in-house?
We
Okay.
did. So in '08 was the last time we actually paid a consultant to help us. In '13 and in '18, it was done in-house by staff at no cost, beyond whatever the cost of time for the staff was, and obviously with the assistance of the Parks Committee. So,
that'd be super.
and that is the plan again in 5 years' time.
That was a great, and if we end up going out every 10 years for an outside view, an outside look, sometimes it's good to have people coming and looking inside.
And I liken this to what we've done with the capital improvements plan. The first couple of years, the staff, we had never done one before. The staff leaned on our consultants, actually Johnson Anderson then, and eventually DLZ, and they assist us with a little bit of mapping now from time to time. But we do, at the staff level, the updates every year, and that's probably a $12,000 to $15,000 savings at least, maybe in this climate, maybe closer to 20. So,
closer to 20.
you know, we do it when we absolutely need to, but when we don't, we do it in-house, and that's a testament to the staff.
Oh, very good. And Mr. O'Neill, I'd like to, commend you on that, and I really appreciate it.
And I thank the staff and the Parks Committee too, who are going to do a lot of this work. and
No, I
appreciate
get it. They're working hard at it. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to make a motion, Supervisor
Please do.
Colwell. Request to award the contract for Parks and Recreation Master Plan not to exceed $29,000, including expenses.
Cwsrf Consulting.
Cwsrf Consulting.
Support. Motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Next one. We're going on a snake hunt.
So,
Okay.
we don't talk about Massasauga rattlers too often in this room, and it's a second such reference tonight. One pertaining to sewers and one pertaining to grants. So,
And I will keep my opinion to myself.
yes, and that may be better for the whole thing. You'll see before you a memo from Justin dated May 12th regarding the Stanley Park Biological Assessment Proposal. As we know, we were awarded a grant for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, or from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, for $500,000 for the development of Stanley Park. It looks like we may have to spend $16,000 in order to get that $500,000 because the National Park Service has deemed this to potentially be a habitat for the Massasauga rattler, the eastern Massasauga rattler. So I haven't seen one down there. I don't hang out down there all the time. But U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services was down in the park with Justin today. I don't think they saw a rattlesnake, but they had to do a preliminary evaluation to determine whether or not what's before you tonight will be necessary. The visit was today. We expect by the end of the month or very beginning of June to know whether or not from Fish and Wildlife this will be necessary. The reason it's before you tonight is because it's kind of a planning for a worst-case scenario. There's a window of opportunity that opens with the state to make our application, or I should say submit this documentation, from about mid-June till about mid-July. If we don't get this study approved tonight, we can't then immediately begin it if it's deemed necessary, which means we will miss that window of opportunity, which will cost us about 6 months. Now, the park isn't going to be developed until 2023. We're not going to have the money to be able to do that until 2023 at this point. But to have a 6-month delay in just getting the documents in, which would allow us to get that final
No, it
approval.
makes sense.
Is just going to potentially really push back our start date. So we may have no choice as to whether or not we spend this $16,200. But the hope is, again, that we will not.
The upside I noticed, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. O'Neill, is that the township may be able to attain a 50% reimbursement of the cost of the study.
The reimbursement would come out of the $500,000. So it's moving it from the left pocket to the right. So it is worth noting. So you could pay the general fund or the park fund back with the grant money, but that fund is already going to be, so it is noteworthy, but, and I appreciate you mentioning it. We invited 3 firms that are qualified in this area, in the state of Michigan, that came recommended to us by the state and by our consultant. And only this consultant, which is kind of the common theme, gave us a price. So it's hard to get quotes these days. And so we're surprised that we had to do it at all. Unfortunately, we only got one price. These folks do come highly recommended, and they were the consultant for the Indian Springs Metro Park that had to do a very similar EMR, which is the Massasauga Rattler study. So again, before you have a recommendation from the Parks Committee to move ahead and approve a not to exceed amount of $16,200 for HRM.
Or it can be to authorize the supervisor to sign the contract and enter into the contract if it's deemed necessary after,
Absolutely could be. Yes.
I like that.
and then I could review the contract.
You could review the contract, yeah.
I will say this very quickly. At a minimum, I believe we're going to have to fill out a brief evaluation. Whether or not we are going to have the capabilities to do that or not, I do not know. We got a quick price today. If just that paperwork needs to be filled out, it could cost us as much as $3,000 or $4,000, which is a lot less than 16. But our hope is that we'll be able to do that at the staff level. Again, we won't know until we hear from Fish and Wildlife.
What the requirement's going to be.
Correct.
But this needs to move along.
Yes, and I would say we could work at the staff level with you, if the board approves this tonight, to only spend the
I've got a
absolute
pair of
minimum.
snake boots.
Yeah. I've heard about those boots.
Yeah.
I thought you weren't going to comment.
I just said I have snake boots.
He couldn't help himself.
Mr. Roman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve not to exceed $16,200 to allow HRM LLC to perform a biological assessment proposal in Stanley Park and to allow the supervisor to sign any contracts that may or may not be necessary.
Motion, look for support? Support. Motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We have request to purchase a new generator for Township 7525 Highland Road. Well, as the saga continues on that old machine, I'm going to tell you that Aaron and I went round and round around the mulberry bush a couple times, and then we found another one that went around it. And we thought this was wrong with the machine, that was wrong with the machine. Every time we started to find out what was wrong with the machine, there was something else wrong with the machine. And when you have water in your oil, it's not a real good sign. I learned that a long time ago from working on mechanical things. And the fact that that generator is 20-some years old, if the board recalls, it was working. It failed when it had extreme use during the tornado. Up until that point, it was tested, operated, maintenance, maintained. It has exceeded its life expectancy. It was also a little undersized now due to the 20-year advancement in technology and the amount of computers that we have in the building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The issue that when we originally tried to consider purchasing a larger unit and then moving it over to the new building, we come to find out that this particular building is on the Y system, and all the new buildings are on the Delta system. So a stationary generator is not available in multi-tap. So move to Plan B. Plan B, we found a portable generator that we leased and put in place. And through much angst, Mr. Potter, I got to give you a lot of credit for all the running around that you did with that with me. In particular, he really carried the weight. And we have an opportunity to purchase the machine. It is actually in place. It's in very, very good shape. and has a very good maintenance history and will serve our needs at this building until we are someplace else. And then when that's done, it has the ability to be taken, because it is portable, to any well house or facility that we have that might need power in the event of maybe a tornado could hit the town, never happened, right?
Not a chance.
Yeah, not a chance. So I think the choice for doing it is very good. And I didn't mean to take all your wind there, but I spent a lot of time fooling around with this thing too. So I just wanted to kind of get down to the brass tacks and we'll get her done.
Yeah, that's essentially it. So we looked at the repair of the existing generator. Originally, they were pretty sure it was just the radiator and some sensors. When we got those new components and they got out here, installed them, and realized that the engine has some significant engine damage somewhere. So we are not recommending to go forward with that because of the age of the unit. So we looked at Plan B, as Mr. Supervisor stated, purchasing a new generator, and essentially you can't get a new generator for 11 to 12 months. So we got a rental unit in through Michigan CAT, and this last couple weeks, my executive secretary, Deborah Negosian, has secured a quote from Michigan CAT to purchase out the unit that we are currently renting. And they quoted her $27,150. We're currently renting the unit for $2,276 per month. So by my math, we'll have paid for that unit anyway in 11 months. And as I stated, you can't get a new generator in this size range for 11 to 12 months. So we're recommending that we purchase this generator. It is sized roughly the same as the existing generator. There is a decoupling system now on the AC units, I understand. So far, the unit is running beautifully. It's got a sound attenuating enclosure. It is a multi-tap, multi-port generator. So while it probably won't be sized appropriately for a new town hall, after we're done with its use as the PD standby generator for dispatch in the township hall, it could definitely be used for other community events, as well as sized for some of our smaller well houses. So I recommend that the township board approve the purchase of the generator that we are currently renting from Michigan CAT in the amount not to exceed $27,150. Yes, it's really up to the township board. I believe this is a general fund expenditure. This could also be a DPS expenditure with some type of repayment back from the township to DPS, or we could, maybe DPS could purchase this generator from the board at a later date.
I think that would be a later date. I think right now, what we just need, we were prepared to spend a whole lot more money.
Yeah, agreed.
And we looked around and got quotes. I mean, you can see the quotes are all over the place. And then the availability became a big issue. I mean, supply chain issues, serious. And so we're fortunate.
Figure out what you need is.
Yeah. So,
I'm not a generator expert by any means, so.
We've got it covered, and it works well, and it's wired in, and is doing what it's supposed to do. Yes, sir.
Does it currently serve the old building and this building?
No, there's no electrical line from that building to this building.
This building, so.
This is strictly an Edison drop, of which Aaron and I are looking at potentially a smaller unit here that would have select circuits so that our SCADA system and things of that such would stay online.
All right, and then I wanted to ask Treasurer Roman, I suppose it could be prorated between building, water, sewer,
police,
all of those, or would it be better just to a general fund and then have DPS maybe buy it out later?
I would be open to either or, but currently our accounting department makes all those decisions. Really kind of out of my realm. But I agree with you, it's something that could be looked at.
I personally, I think the idea is there, but I think for the dollar amount, I think it just should go under general. I think it's going to create more bookkeeping headache to try to keep track of that, another thing to do. For that, if it was 100,000 or something like that, I would say yes.
Trustee Pye, I can check with Elaine tomorrow.
But we can ask bookkeeping.
Tomorrow.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Question, yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, yeah.
It's critical that we have this due to the battery packs for 911 dispatch. You have a delay once those goes down, could be a minute to switch over, a minute and a half to Waterford, which is a lifetime. So it's great that we have that now.
Yeah.
Agree. So when the tornado happened, we discussed this, if you remember, in July or August of last year, and I requested Supervisor Cole then go out and look, so I'm so glad this is able to be remedied, because we absolutely have to have it.
Oh, it was nuts. It was nuts trying to get anybody to even call us back. I mean, that was the worst part. I mean, we spent a lot of time, and no one would even return calls. And then trying to get people out here, and then obviously the process just went on, and then once we started to do the full diagnostic, fortunately, Mr. Noble had an associate that had a generator that was the dog in the yard in the event of a problem. So we did have something as a backup in the event of, it had to have been a manual switch, but we recovered. But now, we're back online and it works out. Any other questions from the board? Okay, with that, I would like to make a motion to approve $25,000 expenditure at the moment out of general fund, but subject to $27,150, I beg your pardon, out of the general fund, subject to some internal bookkeeping review.
Support.
Motion support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it. Moving on. Request approved 2022 OPEB contribution. You're in the highlight.
You just skipped 11E.
Oh, I did. Treasurer's annual report.
All
Yeah.
year, I've been waiting to put this on the agenda, and you're trying to skip it on me?
Sorry. It got blurry there,
So
Mike.
I did pull this out of the consent agenda in case any of the board members had questions. So first of all, do any of you have questions on this year-end report that I put together?
I have a comment. My comment is that I think you've done an exceptional job over the last several years, and in light of what's going on in the marketplace, you still managed to yield us a pretty good return on our investment. So my kudos to you, Michael.
Well, thanks, Mr. Supervisor. If you guys don't have any questions, I'll just breeze through it and try to point out some of the key items in it. As you all know, safety of capital is my objective first and foremost. I will never risk safety for yield. It's not going to happen. Second of all, we've got liquidity needs, so that has to be looked at. And then finally, yield. Most of our money most of our interest earned comes from two sources. One are CDs, and then the other are high grade bond income, all managed by Oakland County's municipal pool. They do a super job. The benefit of using Oakland County as opposed to myself starting to pick and choose bonds. Bonds are bought and sold in the secondary market, and you can actually earn or lose money on them, and I don't want to take that risk. Oakland County's municipal pool allows me to pull money out at any point in time, dollar for dollar, and it's a great benefit to have. So we get the yield from their bonds, and then I've got the liquidity to where I can yank that money out really with 1 day's notice. Interest income was low. That's a result of the Fed and the interest rate environment. We're seeing that move already. It's shocking, you guys. As recent as 3 months ago, I was getting 0.05 on CDs, 13-week CDs. Right now, I can get closer to 1%. That's 20 times what I was getting just a few months ago. So we're certainly seeing that increase. Legacy costs, Our OPEB, end of the year, we were up just over $7 million. Kind of like Rick mentioned with the pension fund, it's a moving target because the market is moving up and down. Interestingly, though, keep in mind our OPEB money, we are not using to fund current retiree health benefits. That comes out of our other incomes, police and fire income, general fund income. So that's why you're seeing our OPEB funding going up and up, because we're not using it to currently fund anything. Our taxable value keeps creeping up, and with it,
Can I have a question on the legacy, please?
absolutely, Mike.
What will happen, or what would happen if we had OPEB paid off totally? So we didn't owe a thing on OPEB. What good would it do the township to have a zero liability in that fund?
Well, obviously, the more money you have in there to fund, the better off you are. As far as the amount needed to bring it to 100%, that's going down every year.
Right.
Let's say we got to a point to where we were 100% funded. At that point, maybe the board consider pulling the money out of the market and just putting that money into some kind of a stable fund, to where even maybe we buy U.S. Treasury funds short term. That way we're not taking on the market risk. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Kind of. I was just wondering what benefit is there, since we're continually paying it down, eventually it's going to be totally paid off.
Okay.
And we won't have any debt whatsoever, any unfunded liability. And I just don't understand what benefit there is if we wanted to write a check right now. I just don't see the benefit of paying it off sooner than what we would have to, and we're already well ahead of where the state expects us to be anyway.
No, that I would disagree with. I think we're 50-something, 57%
57%.
funded, and I think they want us to be higher.
Oh, okay.
If you're referring to MERS, like the
you're
pension,
right.
you're
I'm
you're
getting-
talking MERS. And what-
Can't imagine why I'm confused with all these funds.
Well, what MERS is Pam Hills explained earlier.
Okay.
The couple of years ago, they were very loose with their projections. In the last couple of years, they tightened those projections up. So let's say our unfunded liability is $10 million. It wouldn't benefit us to pay that off right away, because that's constantly moving, as Supervisor Colwell said. Compared to other cities, as she said, 50% of the cities across Michigan, that prior legislation.
Are under 50%.
Are under 50%. So that's when Governor Schneider had put that into play, the legislation where you had to report that unfunded pension liability. Some cities got ahead of the game. White Lake Township was way ahead of it prior to this happening, this legislation. So we're in a very fiscally healthy MERS pension system.
So the bottom line, there's no urgency in
No.
this. We just continue with the process that we started.
And that was Pam Hill's recommendation to
Okay, good.
us in that packet that you guys received.
Thank you, and that'll be important going forward, so I appreciate that.
And as far as the OPEB, what Mike was saying earlier, the OPEB, in my understanding, is MERS, because it's kind of associated with MERS, correct, Treasurer Roman?
Say that again?
The OPEB, MERS kind of dictates that being in those funds that you were speaking about.
That's correct. They have highly suggested we all use this one. It's called the total market portfolio. There's a page in here from MERS. It is supposedly one of their least volatile funds that they have for growing your money, and almost all of the communities that have their retiree healthcare vehicles with MERS are in this fund. Let's see, what else do we have? I've got ratings, power ratings on our banks. They all receive 5 stars, which are superior institutions. That would be Flagstar Bank, Chase Bank, and Huron Valley State Bank. So they are in good shape. There are summaries in here of all the bank accounts because of all the funds we've got. We've got close to 30 different accounts. And then there's also a breakdown that tells you how much is FDIC insured. And that is it. If there's no other questions, I don't really need a motion. We can
No,
just
we
move
will
on.
receive and file.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Thank
then,
you, Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Somebody just jump into 11F, Rick.
Step right in.
So 11F is asking for the board to approve our retiree health care contribution for 2022 on the same amount, the same breakdown as 2021, which is $790,000. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
And I will support your motion. We have motion, we have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item G, request to approve the Marine Patrol Services Agreement with Oakland County Sheriff's Office for 22 through 24. If the board members recall, this particular agreement is required by the Oakland County Sheriff's Department Marine Division in particular for us to be, the township to act primarily as a fiduciary. This particular agreement is an agreement that has come before this board multiple times. Some of you members recall, Mr. Noble, you were not on the board at the time. And it is pretty much a one-size-fits-all Oakland County agreement. And this will, once this has been accepted by the township, and then at that point, if there are lakes that would like to have Marine Patrol, then they can approach the township, and the township will move from there, go from there. Yes, Counselor?
Historically, my recollection on this is it was Cedar Island Lake, and the association had requested the township enter into this agreement specific to their lake. And the township approved this contract conditioned on the association and the township entering into a contract. The association pay the township the amount required to accommodate the schedule that they dictated, the not to exceed amount that they dictated for Cedar Island Lake. And once the township received that money, then the township was authorized to sign the contract with the county and be liable, because obviously the contract's the one who's gonna, the township's gonna be liable on this contract. I've always recommended that we actually attach, because it does say in here that within this writing, the municipality may include any requested schedule and a not to exceed amount of billings for any lake or waterway.
Well, this particular agreement does not mention any particular waterway at all.
Right, but it's telling you.
It's a blanket.
Right, you need to designate a lake if you want to limit the lakes, and you can actually tell them a schedule, what lake, and a not to exceed amount, so that it's not.
And we have done that in the past, and what we did is when they came up with a certain amount of money they had, they came to us and said, we have X dollars. We would call the sheriff's department, sheriff would say, that'll get you this many days, this much, this is the schedule that will get you based on that amount of money. So that's how it was done in the past. So there was no preemptive number, and we can't get it because we don't have any requests right now. So I would not go there, because we would then be regulating what and how much time, and we don't even know completely what their schedule would be able to be. So we did not do that before, and I do not recommend that we go there with that. Mr. Powell.
I find it interesting. There was quite a bit of debate between the property owners on Cedar Island Lake.
Yes, there was.
Last year, the last couple of years, and some really wanted it. Some said there was no need for it whatsoever. So it's going to be interesting to see if they come back this year and which side won.
Correct. So, but this also, applies to Pontiac Lake. It applies to
any lake that approaches
any
us.
lake that is a public access within the confines of White Lake Township. And even actually, they can go on private lakes, but it's highly unlikely they will. Okay. So, but I recommend that we do not insert anything at this time, because we don't know. Okay. And until we have a request from a specific homeowner, then typically we had a request and would go forward, but the sheriff's department likes to have these in place by this time.
I know, but I can hear Terry.
I understand, but I am going to tell you that I'm not going to put that restriction on here because we cannot determine who is going to be doing what or what their scheduling is. We just can't. It's not realistic.
I just wanted to share my recollection of the history here, that's all.
I understand.
I don't care what you do with this.
Good. So therefore,
Well, this doesn't require a lake board to be the one to request, right? You could have a single resident.
as I was
with a deep
told
pocket,
by
right?
the sheriff's department, we had an actual individual from Cedar Island
There you
Lake that came in and wrote a check for X dollars, and that individual.
650.
That individual wrote that check, and it covered several weekends of that summer season because that person wanted to make sure, because they had younger family, and they wanted to make sure there was some civil behavior out there. So, again, not knowing, we may not hear from anybody. You never know. You just might not. At $5 a gallon, there might not be many boats out there.
Is there any way that the administration can send a notification to the lakes area, the lakes in the area, or?
I wouldn't know who to send it
homeowners?
to. There's no association on Cedar Island.
How about all the other lakes in White Lake?
There's no association on Pontiac Lake.
But we have lake boards.
That, it goes into Waterford and White Lake on Pontiac Lake. And there may be persons on the Waterford side that want it or don't want it, and then it would coming to the board and.
So you're saying there's no way that the township can notify lakes that this option's available to them?
I think they're all acutely aware of it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
We could if you wanted to. I mean, like our police liaisons all have, connections to each HOA. I mean, it's possible if you really want to do it.
Right.
Rick, is this just for lakes with public access?
Yes.
I'm going to challenge you on that because all lakes are public. The waterways in the lakes are public.
I understand that.
It's the access that are private, and so if somebody wanted to give the police the opportunity to go across their property to put their boat in.
Yeah, they could.
They could do that.
They could.
Right.
Oh, so you don't need public access to get this?
You actually don't need it because the exception to an emergency. So if the police needed to enter that lake in an emergency situation, they would be able to enter that, access.
They won't trespass unless there's an emergency, but you could be invited.
Right. So I would, any other questions? Yes.
Motion, can I say something real quick?
Certainly.
Would this give the township the opportunity to require, like on Cedar Island Lake, when they shoot the fireworks? What I've done in the past is I require them to pay one of our officers overtime to be on the shooter boat, so we have law enforcement on the water. Because what was told to me from the fireworks companies, they can't guarantee the sheriff's department would be out there. Listening to you, we could probably schedule that where we could make that part of this, is when, on that fireworks day, we would have the Marine Division on the water.
I would say I don't see why you couldn't. However, funding would have to be made available to pay the sheriff's department to be there.
It's my understanding that sheriff's department, we're a third, like the money will run through us. They do
That's
not
all
want to
we are.
get stuck with, dealing with an association. So we'd be like the bank holding the money and then clearing, or correct?
This
The third party.
contract is between you and the county.
County.
This has nothing to do with third parties.
But
What we've done in the past, when we've passed this, is we actually pass a resolution that says we approve this contract conditioned on, and then that's how we connect it to a third party to pay it.
So the only way we could do what Chief is asking here is if in the permit process, we actually put a fee in there for the police department or the Marine Patrol cost, so that would be an additional fee in the permit.
Which I wouldn't have a problem, but you would have to contact Marine Patrol to find out.
Yeah, that's a good option. It would kind of take the onus off of our police department, bringing somebody in and trying to guarantee that overtime. Otherwise, I would deny the permit without any law enforcement out there.
You have to be a little careful because that division is spread pretty thin. And on
Understood.
that day, it's really thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't have a date yet set for it, but I know there is going to be a show on Cedar Island.
I believe it's June 24th, so we would meet that week. You haven't received their permit, correct, Anthony?
No. Conditional right now. It's in the clerk's office right now.
I
There's
think
a
they
couple.
We can have
plan to
further
have-
discussion on
I
that.
think they plan to have them on the 24th
Yeah,
of
there's a
June.
couple more items that they're gonna come
So
up
we
with.
could accept this agreement subject to any possible lake requests.
Oh, we need it. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree.
Sorry?
How many dollars do you have to throw into the fund because you had your phone on?
Yeah, it's not on, it's just vibrating.
Oh, okay.
By the first round.
There you go.
Okay, so,
Motion.
make a motion, Michael.
Motion to approve the 2022 to 2024 Marine Patrol Services Agreement. And allow the supervisor and the clerk to sign.
And subject to any additional agreements with the, of the township, with the, I can't get that out. Go ahead, Counselor.
So you would then, it would be, as authorize the supervisor to sign the contract and any other agreements
And any other agreements
in order to effectuate a
in order
request
to
by,
effectuate
a request by
a
an
request by an
association
association
or individual
or individual
for lake patrol.
for lake patrol.
Boy,
Exactly as I was going to
rolled
say.
right off your tongue, Mike. That was great. I love it.
And the reason we did that is because when he has a lake, he does have to notify them in writing, and so we just want to make sure he has that authority.
And these prices, just to let our residents know, it's only $40.13 an hour to have a marine patrol out on your lake. I mean, that's.
Man and machine,
Man and machine, you can't even,
that's pretty cheap.
really cheap.
Yeah. Motion,
Support.
support, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's have it, great. First reading to, excuse me, H, first reading amendment to fee ordinance number 129.
Supervisor Colwell?
Yes.
I can take this. As you see in your board package, I've attached changes to introduce the first reading to amend the fee ordinance. The requests under section 22 and 30 are changes, updates requested by respective departments align the fees with the amounts assessed collected by Oakland County. Under section 31, the change is related to freedom of information to reflect consistency with other departments. The fee currently reads $1 and should read 10 cents. All of the changes are for spelling format, such as changing the word fee to read as fees under section 31E.
Clarification to clear it up the mud.
I'd like to thank my deputy and your administrative assistant, Trish Pergament, and the other department heads who actively
Went through
engaged in this tedious process. Very tedious.
Okay, I know the FOIA was a lot of.
Yeah.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will support that.
What was the motion? Move to second?
Move to second.
Okay.
Make a motion to move to second reading.
I will support that. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Request to approve master agreement with DTE for municipal street lighting at Elizabeth Lake Road, roundabouts at Tigerine and Oxford Lake Road. Well, as you all know, they are being delayed. However, they would like us to continue to have this agreement in place. And essentially what this agreement does, if you peruse through it all, is the road commission is the ultimate payee for the installation of the lights. And we are, as we are throughout the rest of the township, the payee for the illumination. They give an estimated annual cost of illumination of right around $2,700 for this, which of course is not going to start until such time that the lights are in place. Joe Allen at Rosati went over this back and forth with Edison multiple times, but Edison's kind of like Oakland County. There's a wall. You get there. Comment, Counselor?
We have been fighting with Edison for all of our communities about some of the language in this contract, and essentially it's take it or leave it. They're not budging.
So if you want streetlights, this is what you're going to do. And it is what it is. So the bottom line is, if you take a look and you get on, it'll be page, well, it says 740 on my thing, but that's the entire packet, a million pages. But it's the purchase agreement, Exhibit A, the master agreement. Shows the estimated total annual lumens charge of $27,3504. and it shows the cost of the project at right around $47,000. And there's a revenue credit of a sort, which I could never get an explanation what that was. And the cost is 39, but if you see, the road commission is picking up the 39,392.62. So we are ultimately responsible for the illumination. Any questions from the board?
I'm assuming this is not incandescent. This is LED
Yeah,
lights.
you can't even get an incandescent light from Edison anymore. Yeah. Yeah. They're kind of cool. They're the little low ones.
Little flat.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Just for clarification, when are we obligated to this now, even though they're pushing the
No, it won't.
project out? Or is it when it goes?
when
in?
it goes into effect,
Okay.
yeah.
But it does require
That's the
upfront
road commission.
execution. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But that may or may not happen with the road commission right now because of the delay in the project. But we wanted to move this along on our end so that it just, we're not the cause of the delay of any sort. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I would like a motion.
I make a motion, Supervisor Coyle, to request approval of master agreement with DTE for municipal street lighting, Elizabeth Lake Road roundabouts at Taggart and Expo Lake Roads.
I have a motion, looking for support. Support. I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it. Thank you. Mr. Powell, we're going to start with you.
Oh, all right, very good. First of all, I was taken back at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Supervisor, when you said 450 officers had died this past year. That is a number that is very sad, and I had no idea there were
it's
that
crazy.
many. What a shame. Wanted to just inform the board that the Hidden Lake project, we've had a number of meetings regarding the concern that water is isolated and potentially rises without any means of dropping. They did, in fact, come up with an emergency plan to offer to the homeowners association if, in fact, a major storm raised that lake up to where it was endangering the homes. So I was very pleased that they did their homework and they came up with that plan. It was, I think it was decided, and I might yield to Mr. O'Neill regarding it, that the township probably should not take on the liability of putting dimensions down for the distance from the water to the homes. Even though that was a condition of the master deed and the development agreement, we didn't want to have the township receive all the calls because we had an issue put in the development agreement that would direct all the calls to us if in fact the developer didn't meet our dimensions. We'd much rather have them call the developer. Whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or Christmas Eve, we want the developer to be called, not the township. And so I'd like maybe Sean to elaborate on that maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we're worried about the lake level, obviously, as it relates to getting into the structure, into a home. But we, I think, understand that it will literally fluctuate from season to season, year to year, and I think we're all sort of accepting of that at this point. We had drawn sort of a line in the sand in this agreement that Mr. Powell was talking about where action would have to be taken to lower the lake level, and I think that's probably a prudent thing. And I think we determined that, and Mike, the two of you can speak kind of to that maybe a little bit more directly, but we feel that we've picked a level where you'll have potentially, several days or maybe even a couple of weeks to do something. It's not so close that it's an emergent situation where at noon on a day it hits a level, and if it's not dealt with in 12 hours, there's going to be flooding. So we kind of tried to focus on the safety of the structure more than a setback distance.
Right.
But I think when the homes are built, at least, and they'll probably be built out, if not in this year, certainly next year, that kind of, you're not going to change that. That kind of just sets the stage for, I guess going forward, the potential of, there to be a problem. And I think the hope is that, once the site's stabilized, once infiltration happens on each lot and all the water's not getting to a storm system, that, it begins to, over time, trickle down. And I think we've also looked at having them irrigating common areas with the lake level, and while it may seem like a drop in the bucket, it will still be an incremental benefit in doing it that way. And when you guys approved that amendment, you kind of assigned Mr. Powell to be on our little committee, and we appreciate that. I think we're getting close, and hopefully maybe even later this week, we'll have a document. I think it's between you and Bruce now. Yeah, so we're hoping in the next week or so, we're gonna have everything to a point where it can be signed.
Right.
And recorded. So, thank you.
So that being said, hopefully that's taken care of. The last item, I'd very much like if the administration could reach out to our Parks and Rec Department to reach out to Springfield Township's and Commerce Township's Park and Rec Department to discuss the mutual desire to extend the pathway between the communities. And so each of the communities have said they would like to, but they'd like to start with the Parks and Rec Department talking and have whatever recommendations come from the Parks and Rec
Yeah,
Department.
this is something you and I have talked about, and
Right.
I think it's something we need to have a collaborative effort on.
Yeah.
I have spoken to Senator Runstead, and he's looking for some further information. Hopefully, we can get some of this stuff put together, some rough idea by the end of this month.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Mr. Roman.
I just want to remind everyone, June 1st is the last day that you can get your dog licenses without paying a huge late fee. Oakland County's fees have gone up for everything, including dog licenses. If you still need a dog license, you can get them online. You can go to Oakland County's Animal Control website, or I have a link on our website. If you want to come into the township to get them, you can do that as well. You can pay cash, check, or credit card. Just remember to bring in your rabies vaccine proof. Other than that, I just wanted to wish a couple of happy retirements. One to our assessor, Janine Smith, and also to Denise Stefanik, the library director. So happy retirement to both of you. And then I just wanted to welcome again our new assessor, Dave Heber. That's all I had, Rick.
Thank you. Trustee Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I was going to start my trustee comments as well with wishing Denise Stefanik from the library a happy retirement. She had a little open house farewell party last week that was well attended. She's, been part of the library for a very long time and moved up as assistant director and then to director, as you know. So she was an integral part of the new library, and she will be missed. She's not going anywhere, but we do wish her well in her retirement. Next, I wanted to talk a minute about Michigan Police Week. As we all know, in 2019, my board member so kindly unanimously supported a resolution to make Police Week here in White Lake Township this week right now. And I just wanted to read a little blurb into the record. May 15th is National Police Officer Memorial Day. In 1962, President Kennedy signed a proclamation to designate Peace Officer, Memorial Day, and the week in which the date falls as Police Week, honoring all law enforcement officers and those that lost their lives in the line of duty. This year, the names of 619 officers killed in the line of duty, 319 fatalities were COVID-related, are being added to the memorial in Washington, D.C. These 619 officers included 472 officers who were killed during 2021, plus 147 officers who died in previous years, but whose stories of sacrifice have been lost to history until now. I also want to thank our current clerk and deputy clerk as being both retired police officers, so thank you for your service. The police department open house is back this year as well, and that will be June 5th from noon to 3 p.m. So that's always a really fun event here in the township. It's a free event and all residents are welcome. You can go on their website. They have food and activities, and it's a great afternoon, and it's right here in the parking lot. And then coincidentally, it's also National EMS Week as well, so we want to recognize those that are part of the fire department, that are EMS. Both are such integral parts in keeping our community safe. And then I'll help Andrea out because she's not here. So the Parks and Rec is hosting their Family Fun Day, June 25th. I know she's mentioned that before. And that's from 3 to 9. That's also a free event that we're hosting in White Lake. So all of that should be lots of fun. I want to take a minute just to address any residents that are listening to us. I've gotten a lot of letters and residents reaching out. Social media sometimes takes a life of its own, and don't believe everything you read on social media. We are having a boom here in White Lake and a growth, and as you know, we're a desirable community. We all love living here, so we do have a lot of interest in White Lake right now, but there's silly rumors going around that like thousands of apartments are coming in one spot, and that's not happening. Just trust the process, trust this board. None of those plans have been brought to this board yet, and we're all going to make sure that there's a careful balance of growth. And then lastly, I just want to mention that it was a pleasure seeing you all at the MTA. That's the one time a year that we get to socialize as a board, and it was very enjoyable, and it was nice to see you all. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noble.
I'd like to congratulate Denise and Janine on the retirements. And as the previous board, I did do 26 years. I was very lucky to make it out unscathed. I did work with 2 police officers, Pat O'Rourke and one of the Livonia police officers that was killed in the line of duty one night that I served back in 2011. It was horrific. So this week is very dear to me for the men and women in blue that risk their life every day. So I appreciate everybody recognizing that.
Very good. Again, a sound to echo. Congratulations, Janine and Denise, for your retirement. Of course, we all know, again, that we've talked about the roundabouts are delayed for another year. It's a prime example of where costs are going. And of course, when you only have one bidder come in on a job, that doesn't help things any either. So the road commission, the conversation I had, they are going to regroup and put it out for bid in sometime in the fall. And hopefully we'll have a spring build at a more realistic price. Home Has, which the township is very proud to do, is Saturday, June 11th. It'll be in the Kohl's parking lot. And you can go on the website and see what it is. We don't take latex paint. So, but any, gas, oil products, bug killer, something in a can, you're not quite sure what it is, but it's some kind of cleaning fluid or something, bring it down. Fluorescent tubes, propane tanks. So there's a whole list of what is and what isn't. They'll be available to take a look at. I think it's up there already. I have to double check, but if not, it will be. And I look forward to seeing you then.
What was the time again, Rick, on June?
It starts at 9, runs from 9 to 1.
9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Thanks.
Yep. So, and don't run the cones over and be respectful of the people in the green jackets, okay? Because your E-team is there. So, that being said, I'd like to say thank you to all my board members and our guests, our recorder, and our guests in the crowd. Thank you for being here and having an interest in what goes on in White Lake Township because it is your township, it is your home. So with that, I say good night, God bless, and I call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, adjourn.